Alrighty, how's everybody doing today? Good, I hope. Good, I hope. Good, I hope. We have a lot to talk about today. Oh, I'm a little low, aren't I? Let me do. Wrong lever. There we go. Well, a little bit more. There we go. All right. Now we're up a little bit higher. Yeah, feed those ducks. If anybody doesn't know, that's the name of the music that we play on the intro, and I don't know what that has to do with feeding ducks, but that's what it's called. So that's where it's at. I hope everybody's doing good today. We have a lot of news to cover. A lot has happened over the weekend. I'm glad I saved this live stream for today. A lot of news came out. It gives us a more full picture of what's going on. And you guys are actually going to get to see me do some map updates today live because we just got some more news about the situation around Avdeevka. So I'm going to take us over to the map real quick. But before we do that, if everybody who is on Twitter, watching on Twitter right now, I'm getting on my phone. If everybody would go and retweet the live stream, that would be a big help to me. It's the easiest way you guys can support me, support my work, get me out to new faces, and get our community growing and be bigger. So I really appreciate that. If you guys also wouldn't mind subscribing to my YouTube page, liking and leaving a comment, that helps me once again with the algorithm and gets me to see more eyes. So I really appreciate that, everybody. All right, let's take us over to the map, shall we? Boom, boom. All right. So just overall, the overall front line has not actually moved that much outside of the hotspot, which is Avdeevka. So as I said, Robitny, no changes, no notable changes around Dorozhine. Still pressure across the entire front. There have been increased glide bomb strikes on Ugledar and Vadyana, as well as continued high continued pressure around Novomihailovka. We also have rumors that there has been some expansion into these fields outside of Marinka. So we'll see how that develops, but nothing to report as of right now. And then Bakhmut, nothing has really changed here. Nothing has changed up in the north. We have some more rumors that the Russians have pushed in further towards Yampolivka. They are now less than a mile away from this settlement. So I'm going to talk about a anecdotal Ukrainian Telegram post that I saw as well, talking about the situation in Terny and just how it basically represents the overall situation across the entire front. And then up towards Sinkivka, we have I haven't seen the geolocations yet, but I believe that the Russians have moved into this part of the forestry here. So a slight advance in that area. But the main topic of today's discussion is going to be Avdeevka. And Avdeevka has seen a lot of movement. It is a very liquid situation in the city right now. And this is the primary focus of the Russians currently. As you can see, obviously the green is the confirmed zone of control that has expanded. Purple is unconfirmed, although this one is likely to be confirmed very soon. We just don't have a specific geolocation for this. All sources, both Ukrainian and Russian, are saying that this has happened, but we don't have an actual geolocation yet. So we're gonna hold off on this one and wait and see. But this is a horrible situation for the Ukrainians in Avdeevka. Currently, they are looking at um, a basically a whole new salient is forming here, where the only way of getting into town currently is down this road right here, doot 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 doot, right, and then they can extend it out. uh, they can travel down all the roads in Avdiivka, but this is the major main supply line, right? And this is a significant amount of progress that the Russians have made right here. If you remember, first they captured this zone right here, and then the Ukrainians were forced to retreat from these three fields and retreat basically back around this sand quarry, which I think is now a reservoir, sort of. It's filled with water. At least it looks like that on the map. I don't know how it looks. It's probably frozen over right now, actually, around Avdiivka, but who knows what it actually looks like. It could be empty. Um, we did have geolocation of a Ukrainian soldier hiding under this bridge, being watched by a Russian drone that was just sitting idle, just gathering reconnaissance information. So the Russians are extremely close to this road now, this railroad rather, and they're likely probably up against the railroad right now. We've got more rumors that they've progressed into some of these streets down here, especially along Stepova Street, that they've expanded down in this way. But we don't have exact confirmation. And then over here, we don't actually have the names of the streets here, but there is also rumors that the Russians have pushed into this area. So it's very dynamic, very fluid. The situation is evolving very quickly, and the Ukrainians can't seem to stabilize the line anywhere that they want to, right? Uh, I expected a lot more progress through the south after this breakthrough. I thought that the Ukrainians would be forced to pull back into the ninth district, and then most like the filtration plant and most of this would fall. However, the Ukrainians again didn't do the smart thing and take a few steps back, give the Russians some space, and re-establish defensive lines. No, they held on with everything that they could, and then when they were overran in specific areas, particularly here, they have not been able to stabilize this entire northern edge of the salient. And as you can see, the Russians are getting extremely close to this last supply line. If you look at it on the map, we'll say boop, boop, less than like a kilometer away, maybe 800 meters. Um, I'm sorry, about a kilometer away, about 0.5 miles. And that means that this entire area now is being surveilled with both reconnaissance, FPV, and grenade drop drones, as well as has great artillery coverage of these roads in and out of the city. So again, now we're looking at another road of death in and out of Avdiivka, which is not very beneficial for the Ukrainians. Dude. I can't click this line. There we go. So, uh, if the Russians continue to progress, if they push up into this area and secure basically the entire railroad up along the coke plant, then supply into Ukraine or into Avdiivka, sorry, is done. There's just going to be no way to supply these regions. And I have set up a new presentation for you guys, just to sort of show you what I think the map is going to look like in the coming days, especially down in these southern regions. Remember, I'm going to bring up this uh, map, which was my prediction about 2 weeks ago as to the new defensive positions that the Ukrainians were likely going to take up in the coming days. That's when we first got rumor of this breakthrough. So, I had not expected so much advancement up in the north. I figured around the coke plant, the Ukrainians would have the easiest supply, easiest time keeping this, within their control, but they've lost it. So I'm going to bring up the gray zone right here, tab, which is kind of, I use it for gray zone, but I also use it for some other things just so I can hide where I think the defensive line is going to be. So here was my ideal pullback for the Ukrainians to set up a defensive, new defensive lines. Really try to hold on to as much of the city as they can while giving up some of the less important areas. And I'm not saying that these areas aren't important because they are very old fortifications, but once they're overrun like this, there's no point in holding like this fortification. You're just bringing your men in to have them killed. So I was expecting a pullback like this to the orange. Let me increase the transparency on this so you guys can see it a little bit better. And as you can already see, the Russians have pushed into this new defensive area and have basically cut it in half. And that's a horrible situation. And you got to remember that this whole side out here doesn't really exist. Like I figured that they would set up along these tree lines and hold the supply line, but this doesn't really, this doesn't really matter. It's more like that. So when I say cut in half, this is what remains of the north and south connection for Avdeevka for the AFU. It's horrible. This is an absolute disaster to happen in the north. I don't know if the manpower and ammunition situation is so bad in Avdeevka and like in this part of the city, in the southern part of the city in particular, that the manpower has hollowed out so horribly from the 110th Brigade that they just can't hold lines anymore. I don't know what's going on, but Avdeevka is now like on the clock. This is an absolute nightmare development for the AFU. If you remember, my prediction was that this battle was probably going to go till April, May. It still could. You never know. But right now, if the Russians make any progress here, I don't see how the Ukrainians hold this bottom part of the salient for very much longer at all. And then, this is, oops, let me go back and then let me actually get rid of this. This is not like Azovstal. This is not, it is a large plant, but this is not the same as Azovstal. They will not be able to hide in here forever and drag this out. Once the bottom part of the city falls, this basically will become the new frontline defensive position, sort of probably along something like this, trying to hold this salient still and try to keep the Russians from pushing into Prvomaiski and into these settlements over here as well, just maintaining as much buffer zone as they can right here, and then eventually probably backing off to around this series of reservoirs and shallow stream. I don't know what you would call this, but reservoirs and marshland and just this natural defensive line right here that kind of runs up through Orlivka, through Berdichi, right here. So this whole salient is likely going to fall as soon as the southern flank of Avdeevka collapses. Again, I don't expect the Ukrainians to retreat. They haven't done it once this entire war. Why would they start now? Unless this new military leadership gets brought in all of a sudden and sweeping changes occur, I just would expect the same bloody grind in horrible positions and get ready for this place to get absolutely leveled by glide bombs because, the Russians did some bombing of Azovstal, but it was still rather limited compared to what is happening in Avdeevka now. We have Russian reports that there are between 50 and 70 glide bombs being used on Avdeevka per day alone. And if you guys remember, about three or 4 months ago, I think that there was a report that came out that said that the Russians were using 40 across the entire front all day. And that was a huge increase from the here and there sightings of either regular bombings or glide bombings. And we hardly ever saw regular bombings. So Avdeevka is in the squisher right now, and here is my lower end of the presentation, just to show you what I expect the Ukrainians to pull back from here shortly or be forced out of, especially over on this edge. There's just not really anything even worth defending here anymore. Since this northern part has fallen, there could be cut off very quickly. If this is cut, if any progress is made by the Russians on this flank, this whole situation would become much worse. And just for reference, here's my previous what I would call suggestion for a Ukrainian withdrawal to really extend the Battle of Avdeevka for as long as humanly possible. But I don't think that that's what's going to happen. Again, we have a lot of political interference in military decision making, and it is starting to greatly negatively impact the AFU's ability to fight. There's all this back and forth right now about Zaluzhny getting removed. We basically have confirmation now. Zelensky, I think, came out last night and said that he is planning on removing Zaluzhny as the commander in chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, as well as probably making changes to about two dozen high level positions in the AFU, which I would take a stab at would be everybody who's loyal to Zaluzhny, and that is going to have incredible impact on morale, on the willingness to die for the state. Removing trusted military leadership does not make your military particularly happy. Now, if you're removing completely incompetent military leadership, it can make everybody very happy, but I just don't think that that's what's happening here. I think you're about to see a lot of basically politicians get put into military positions, and that's not going to be very good. If the head of the SBU, Budanov, becomes the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, that would be a prime example of somebody with no real military experience. I mean, he has like small special forces experience, but no combined arms, large operation experience. Putting somebody like that in that position is going to tell you everything you need to know about what the situation is for Ukraine and how they plan on continuing the fight in the future. So that's the situation around Avdeevka. Nothing good for the Ukrainians. And this whole development was basically over the last 2 to 3 days. And remember, we're on a 24-hour to 48-hour delay for information coming out of Avdeevka. Oh, I did have to increase. I think I might have already mapped it. I think that the map was something actually like this. And this gardening cooperation, which is what they call it, had not been captured yet. And then, but now it has been captured. So we will leave the map where it is. I think that was a slight mistake on my part. But I didn't have any geo confirmation of the Russians actually, or the Ukrainians being in this position. So I just figured this entire settlement had been captured when they had first announced it. But yeah, expect retreats from this section, expect retreats from the filtration plant if it's not already been abandoned, expect retreat from this whole forested area, and basically back into the 9th district. I think that's what we can expect for in the coming days and weeks of the Avdeevka, the battle for Avdeevka. And I would watch this, 1 mile area, the 1 by 1 mile square area right here with great interest, because if this collapses, we're looking at an actual encirclement and potentially significant casualties for the AFU if they don't surrender. So it will be interesting to watch over the coming days what happens. Let's see. We have a question here. With this war, do you think the lines will change in 1 year? Yes, for sure. I mean, we're seeing the lines change right now. Do you mean gigantic, monumental shifts in the lines? Probably not. I think you're going to see continued operations like this, where we have boilers that end up expending a lot more of the Ukrainian army than the Ukrainian army wants to expend on these areas, and that's going to be the continued Russian, plan going forward. Remember, guys, we're just getting into the stream, 20 minutes in right now. We just finished Frontline Updates. If you guys have questions that you want answered live on air, Super Thanks is the easiest way to do that. It also is an easy way to support me. That way I can just see them pop up. If they're just random questions in the chat, I might get to them at the end, but no guarantee on that. So I appreciate everybody in here. I hope, once again, I hope everybody's having a great day. We're going to move over to Twitter now and look at some of the stories that I wanted to talk about. Twitter. Okay. Into my bookmarks. So yeah, this is the first thing I wanted to talk about. The new bill that came out of Congress that is allocating new money for the 2024 budget, for the U.S. budget, and where that money is going to go. I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm just going to spitball here. It was something like 14 billion to Taiwan, 18 billion to Israel, and then 60 billion to Ukraine. On top of that, there were some new legislation for border security and management, and so on and so forth. Really, I hadn't dug into it, but when I had first read it, I didn't know that the Biden administration basically hadn't moved its feet at all on the immigration issue. They're trying to get this deal passed and trying to get funding, but they can't even get an agreement moving forward, just even temporarily, perhaps letting less immigrants into the country or whatever. So they obviously have a plan with the immigration situation that it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know if they just want more voters, if they're just trying to swing red states blue. It's hard for me to tell right now, or if we just actually need the immigration for economic reasons. I'm not 100%. But they put this bill forward. I thought it was going to be passed because I figured they had made some sort of progress on these negotiations. Apparently, they have not made any progress. Here's Speaker Mike Johnson. I've seen enough. This bill is even worse than expected and won't come close to ending the border catastrophe the president has created. As the lead Democrat negotiator proclaimed, under this legislation, the border never closes. If this bill reaches the House, it will be dead on arrival. So there's the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and here is Steve Scalise. Sorry. Let me be clear. The Senate border bill will not receive a vote in the House. Here's what the people pushing the deal aren't telling you. It accepts 5,000 illegal immigrants a day. And basically, these 5,000 illegal immigrants that can come into the country are only counted if they are from border states, so Mexico, Canada, and not international refugees or immigrants, which would be a majority coming up from Guatemala and South America. So there's a lot of that at play. And apparently also in this legislation, they can basically suspend this 5,000 cap if the president wants to, which doesn't solve the immigration issue. And I'm not like some anti-immigrant guy. My family immigrated here legally. On my dad's side, at least, immigrated here legally from Canada, formerly New Zealand. So he moved here. He had to wait 10 years to get his green card and his citizenship and stuff like that. So I have mixed feelings about immigration. I think immigration is a positive thing. I think bringing new cultures in is a positive thing. But this is obviously a political tool that's being used against the United States. So, let's see. At the end of the day, they didn't do what they needed to do. Again, a massive Biden L. Couldn't get funding for his Ukraine project, which is now beginning to actually significantly suffer from the fiscal without the fiscal support that the U.S. is supposed to be providing. And as you can see, Ukraine is obviously not that important when there are votes that need to be maintained, and the voting uh, and going into an election year, there's just not going to be this eagerness to, first off, send money away, and not defend what your constituents deem as important. And for the Republicans, that's immigration. Uh, for the Biden administration, there's obviously something that's going on with the immigration that they want to go against the Republicans, and it's a lot of political theater, but at the end of the day, Ukraine isn't getting the money that they need, and that's a pretty big deal. So back over to Twitter. We have this story again. Here's the anecdotal stuff, so take it with a pinch of salt. These do come from Ukrainian reporters. This one says Ukrainian news reporter Yuri Butstov says that the situation in Avdeevka is critical. The defenders are running low on ammo. The 110th Mechanized Brigade is exhausted. Russian artillery, aviation, and drones, obviously, are working almost nonstop. The enemy is closing on the iconic entrance. So here we have an omission by the Ukrainians that the situation is beyond critical in Avdeevka. And really, this right here is the part I want to highlight. And you're going to see this again. Russian artillery and aviation are working almost nonstop, right? This is something that doesn't really seem to get picked up by the pro-Ukrainian crowd ever. When they talk about casualties, when they talk about, cost situations, like how much is it costing the Russians to actually capture Avdeevka? You've probably heard that bullshit Ukrainian 600 vehicle losses compared to the Ukrainian 400 or 40 or something around Avdeevka, which is just a crock of shit. They count every vehicle as Russian, basically, unless it has to be Ukrainian, because the Russians don't operate those vehicles like Bradleys and stuff like that. And so every BMP is Russian, and it goes all the way back. You can look at the map with the geolocations. It goes all the way back into territory that used to be controlled by Ukraine. So, I mean, I'm not saying that the Russians are taking losses. They definitely are. Armor losses also don't equate to human casualties. They can correlate, but they're not directly connected. So all of this talk about losses doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, yes, the Russians are attacking, so they're exposing themselves a little bit more. Even if you said, I mean, I think 1-to-1 is pretty close to what is going on in Ukraine or in Avdeevka right now. And I say that because if you remember, the Russians are dropping 60 glide bombs on Avdeevka a day, 50 to 60, which those are 500 kilogram bombs falling on a city, and any building that thing goes off next to, everybody inside is going to be incapacitated or dead. Their organs are liquefied, so on and so forth. That's what these bombs do. The Ukrainians actually talk about that being the best way to die, because if you get hit by one of these glide bombs, it's just instant. It's not like you're dying from shrapnel wounds from a drone that's hovering over you 100 feet in the air. So that is as a primary factor of why I'm calling bullshit on these casualty numbers. Another one is that the Russians are firing 10,000 shells a day across the entire front, whereas the Ukrainians are firing 2,000 at the most across the entire front. So you have a 5-to-1 ratio on artillery. You have a Russian advantage when it comes to drones, both reconnaissance, FPVs, and grenade drop drones. Advantage when it comes to Lancet, deep strike, all of this stuff. And yet somehow the Russians are still taking unbelievable casualties compared to the Ukrainians, and things are going good. Obviously, that's not what's happening, because if that was what was happening, they wouldn't be losing Avdeevka right now, right? It's a fortress city. So this is, again, you're going to start hearing a lot of cope coming out of the pro-Ukrainian crowd. So did I not save the other one? No, I didn't. All right, let me go to my profile. Oh yeah, and if you guys were interested, it looks like Tucker Carlson's actually going to interview Putin. So that's going to be an interesting interview. I think I hope he's very tough with Putin. Not in the same way that the Western media is tough with Putin. I hope he actually asks real questions and not those lazy bait questions. Like, I don't think he will, because that's not his style. But I also hope he doesn't just roll over for Putin, just because that happens sometimes. You go into a place where that he has control. You hope that it's not just going to be pushing narratives. Obviously, there's going to be some of that. He's the president of a country, he's a politician, he has to push narratives. But I hope that there's something real, and they actually talk about something deeper than just the Nazis in Ukraine and the West is at fault and this and that. I hope they really dig into some important information. Okay, and here's one of the. This is a pro-Ukrainian account talking. I know you guys can't read this. I'll switch it over in just a second. This is a pro-Ukrainian account talking about the situation around Turney. If you guys remember, here I'm going to actually show you guys where this is talking about, just so you know. Here we go. Boop. So Turney is up here by Yempolivka. So this is the area that's being discussed. In particular, this crossing right here, which has been destroyed and rebuilt a number of times, along with this crossing, and they have little barges and stuff around this area. This is one of the few areas that they can actually cross into Turney and Yempolivka. Obviously, there's a land bridge right here, but crossing on boat is very difficult. So that crossing up here and crossing down there really constricts the amount of logistics that can come into this area, as well as the one road that they can travel on up and down. Really makes this whole situation tight. So heading back over to the Twitter now. Right here. So the situation near, I don't know what this is, which is Turney, but I don't know what this is supposed to be, and Yempolivka from the fighters on the ground. The situation is incredibly difficult. The approach to the position is very difficult, which are those 4 crossings I talked about, which negatively affects the evacuation. He's talking about wounded, which passes only in the dark, and you need to carry the wounded for about 3 kilometers under enemy fire. There are constant enemy attacks, and positions are constantly changing hands. The biggest difficulty is that the enemy has maximum dominance in artillery. During the day, it is impossible to even poke your nose out of the dugouts. Therefore, the situation is incredibly difficult. Again, I'm going to point here to another anecdotal pro-Ukrainian account talking about a difficult situation on a different part of the front. So it's not just Avdeevka, it's not just Novomihailovka, but also up in the north, Turney. The situation is incredibly difficult. And look at the finer aspects of this post. They're only allowed to. They only can move at night, which is probably still difficult because the Russians have plenty of thermal imaging. So it's not. It's safer because there's just less chance of you being seen, but you can still be seen. They have to travel 3 kilometers on foot to get wounded individuals out of the fighting, out of danger, so they can be operated on, and they can only move these wounded again at night. So in this situation, you have a lot of wounded individuals bleeding out, dying before they can actually make it to proper medical facilities, and they say that they can't even pop their heads out of their dugouts without risk of being killed. So across the entire front, the situation is just going to get worse and worse and worse. And again, did my mic mute again? Hello, can you hear me? It's doing it again, boys. I don't know what's going on, but it's doing it again. All right. So we have where was I? Yes, artillery dominance. So pay attention to the wording. It's always difficult. The casualties are always high. The Russians always have dominance in artillery, drones, aviation, whatever it is, always happens. And then somehow the Russians are still losing. I don't know, man. It's just difficult. Yeah. Sorry about my microphone. I don't know what happens. I just replug it in and then it seems to fix it. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry, boys. I'm sorry. I can't. I don't know what to do. All right. Now, go ahead, guys. Get your questions in. Get your questions in. Get your questions in. We can talk about stuff. If I missed anything, let me know. There's a lot to talk about today. But let's get it started, huh? Yeah, I know. My mic just went out for a couple seconds. I saw it go out. I get a little pop up that says your mic is now muted. So, questions. I know I'm on like a 30-second delay or something, so we'll figure it out here. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Any sabotage behind Ukrainian lines? Yeah, I actually saw a photo of some I guess you could call them Russian partisans in either Kryvyi Rog or Nikolaev, somewhere west of the Dnieper in the south. Had burned a whole warehouse full of Ukrainian supplies. I think it was like warm weather clothing and stuff like that. Burned a whole warehouse of that stuff down. So, I mean, there is some of that going on, but I'm pretty sure that the SBU has a very, very strong grip on the security situation in Ukraine. Reports come in, Abrams tanks. So that video of the Abrams tanks around Avdeevka, I think, is fake. I think that those are actually the wrong model of Abrams, and those were that was probably somewhere in Eastern Europe. And that was just a fake thing. So again, we haven't seen any Abrams. We haven't seen. We don't. I mean, they should be getting used right now, right? But they're not. So I think that there's been some behind the scenes agreement that these are not going to be used at all, basically, except for propaganda purposes. Let's see. Questions. Drones. What can the Russian Navy do to counter sea drone effectiveness? The biggest thing would probably just, like I always say, large area jamming. So the kind of what we're seeing going around Kaliningrad right now, but on a smaller scale and for battlefield applications. So basically cutting off a 100 by 100 kilometer area with electronic warfare that disables the use of drones like that, I think would be like the easiest way to do it. And having electronic warfare on ships, how long is that going to take? Forever. The easiest thing they can do right now, and what they should be doing, where this ship was hit. Here, I'll show you guys where the ship was actually hit. It's actually very embarrassing for the Russian military. I don't know how this even happens. You know that your Black Sea fleet is being threatened by these drones. So the boat was, I'm pretty sure it was hit inside of this lake right here. And that means that the drones passed through this tight checkpoint right here that could have just been netted off or something, but wasn't. And so, yeah, that's kind of an unfortunate happening, but it is what it is. I don't know where exactly it was destroyed. It might have been destroyed out here when it was going into it. I'm not exactly sure, but that could be easily solved with net systems. They're surface drones, so it wouldn't be that difficult. They did it around the Crimean Bridge. Here we go. Will Mossad and the neocons after the SMO will Russia Mossad the neocons after the SMO for the damage they've done? No, probably not. Again, remember, it's all about money. They're business partners. If Russia could start sending LNG and oil to Germany tomorrow in a new contract, they absolutely would. Don't think that this makes these countries enemies forever. Leadership changes, things are forgotten. Will the U.S. and Russia be on good terms for a long time? Probably not. But things happen very quickly, and enemies become casual trading partners again in very short order. So They probably will kill a lot of the people in the Ukrainian government, though, that have committed terror attacks. Like, I don't see Bundanov or any of the intelligence community surviving this war. I don't think that's going to happen. I just joined, but where do you expect the Russians to advance? So I have two areas that I expect them to advance. Oh yeah, I'm still sharing. Okay. I expect the Russians to push hard in Avdeevka, get the Ukrainians to commit a lot to Avdeevka to try to maintain the opening of this. Not so much this part of the city, but keeping this open. Uh, I expect the Russians to push hard in Novomikhailivka and south here towards this road, and then put extreme amounts of pressure on Vuhledar. And then up north, I expect the Russians to push hard on this side of this river right here and take most of this, capturing Terny, Yampolivka, and then perhaps entering Torsk and Zakharine. So um, uh, there, and then up here, obviously around Kupiansk, because this down the Oskol is also important. Um, I expect that these pushes to the north and south to begin uh, as this situation. It's probably already getting to the point that I'm referring to, but the situation in Avdiivka getting so critical that the AFU has to bring in reserves to really make sure that they can keep this salient open and they don't lose the entire garrison here to the Russians. So that's where I expect the attacks to come from. Let's see. Drones. What can Russia do to protect its soldiers from FPV drones? It seems that they are persistently have no solutions. So this is important. This is going to be important for the future of warfare in general. This idea that, like I said, the way I would go about it is large aerial denial, electronic warfare. What you'll probably end up seeing is more like man portable devices, like the thing we see on most of the Russian vehicles now that are coming out of the factories. They all have individual, I think it's breakwater electronic warfare devices on them. They just like little nubs that sit on the top of the tank, and that it makes the drones lose visual control. Basically, it makes the screen fuzzy and stuff like that. So, here we go. You doing YouTube full time? Yeah, I have other means of income, so I'm not like making all my money from YouTube. I wouldn't be making enough money from YouTube and Twitter and stuff. Um, and I'm not like grifting, so I'm not like, I don't know, I'm not asking for money really. I'm just providing content, and then if you guys feel like it, you can watch it, and I get paid from YouTube, and I get paid if you guys donate. So, but I have other sources of income. I don't necessarily rely on this. Like if this went away tomorrow, I'd be okay. But yes, I am technically, I guess this would be considered my full time focus right now. Do you think the new Russian self-propelled artillery will have a significant impact on the war? 80-kilometer range is huge. Any new weapons are going to have an impact on the war. I don't think it will necessarily have an impact on this war necessarily, just because production. I mean, you would need a couple batteries of these things to really start seeing net positive results on this battlefield. But definitely improving those sort of systems and having them for the future is definitely going to make the Russian army more capable, especially if those are firing guided artillery shells. 80 kilometers, that basically means you have a HIMARS. Obviously, a lower yield HIMARS, but still a very deadly weapon. I'm pretty sure even with you can jam Starlink. The Russians have done it before, so even if these drones are using Starlink, they can be jammed. I don't know if Starlink is um, operational around Crimea. I think that they specifically denied that, but I actually, I'm not sure. Camera is not focused, or am I drunk? Is it focused? I don't know. Sometimes it gets a little blurry, I think. Hopefully it's okay for you guys. Do, 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 do. Larger combat ships do have anti-torpedo nets. They could lower those. Yeah. I just, I just, I think at this point, it's like the Russian military just doesn't really care about these ships at all. Uh, it's a pride thing keeping them where they are, and they're not doing anything. So it just doesn't seem like there's a much interest in protecting them. I already answered this question, but like you said that will they kill the neocons after the war? No, I don't think so. I don't think that they have any intention of killing anybody. But like I said, the intelligence leadership in Ukraine will probably be handled. Let's see. Questions. What do you think happens if Ukraine does not get the U.S.'s money? You're just going to see this slow degradation. They're going to keep trying to fight. They're going to keep trying to use the EU. They're going to keep asking the EU for more and more. But if that U.S. money doesn't come in, things are going to get bad. Running a 60 billion deficit is not great. And that doesn't necessarily mean all 60 billion we're going to go to Ukraine. I think 20 billion we're going to go to U.S. industrial restocking of their own military equipment and their industry. But still, a $40 billion deficit is something that Ukraine cannot deal with. How much did you learn? How did you learn so much about military detail? Reading a lot. My dad was also pretty well read on military strategy. So from when I was a little kid, I mean, I used to go and watch my dad play. There's a tabletop game. It's called Squad Leader, and that's not real, but it's one of those games where it's like they used to do the Battle of France. They did Stalingrad. They did all of these different battles, and they would take weeks to play these out. Dozens of hours playing out these large tabletop military games. So I've just been inundated with that stuff since I was a little kid, and it's just really easy for me to be interested in it. I don't know. I never get tired of reading about this stuff. Never get tired of learning, and there's so much that I don't know, and I can just constantly be challenging myself to learn more. Let's do this. All right. Do you think Avdeevka will fall before Victory Day? That's like a month, right? Yeah, I think it's like Wait, are you talking about Victory Day, like VE Day, like victory in Europe? I'm thinking about the elections. I think that the Ukrainian pro-Ukrainian talk Russians are supposed to finish up Avdiivka before the elections. There's no timetable on it. If the Ukrainians want to throw hundreds of more men into that boiler, why would the Russians stop them? I don't think that they're in any rush. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You mean Excalibur rounds? Those are like 110,000 a pop, though. Not Excalibur, but Krasenpol is the Russian one. We were talking about Russian artillery, I believe. I don't think we were talking about Ukrainian artillery. You doubt the efficacy and magical properties of Wunderwaffens. Clown, classic clown. Yeah, I do. Sorry. Everybody's waiting for F-16s and shit. What is that new missile that they're talking about? I mean, they were talking about getting the Torres forever too, and Germany said fuck no. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? I hear they now openly discuss weaknesses of GPS provided targeting. Yep, it's especially with the Russians. They have a really good GPS jamming. So if the Russians continue at this pace, are we looking at 15 years of more war? No, 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 no. The pace is not necessarily slow. It's just the lines don't move on the map. That's that. People have this like misconception that that the Russians need to, push quick and gain a bunch of territory to be winning or anything like that. No, they're playing a long game. They're waiting for Western support to die as is happening. They're waiting for the internal issues in Kiev to start bringing everything down, which is happening. And they are conserving their own manpower. They don't want to sacrifice thousands and thousands of men to do this quote unquote quick when they can rely on their aviation, drone, and artillery advantage to just slowly beat the Ukrainian army to death, basically, is what's going to happen. And that is the way the cookie crumbles. Are they really sending women en masse to the front now? It seems like it. I saw like 12 obituaries today for Ukrainian women who have died in during military service. So it looks like they are going the extinction route, and their decision. I'll just be there at the end of the day saying I told you so. But any thoughts on drones changing frequency to evade EW? I mean, it's going to turn into an arms race, right? It's always going to be a battle between drones having protected systems that can get around. May 9th is Victory Day. I knew that. I was thinking, for some reason, though, the talking point has been the elections coming up in March, I believe, is when the Avdeevka is supposed to be finished by. I wasn't thinking Victory in Europe Day when I said that, but yeah. What about the weather, please? The weather in Ukraine? Shit, I don't even know. Hold on. Shit, weatherman coming in hot. Let's see. I spell Avdeevka wrong, according to Twitter. Okay, here we go. Oh, there we go. All right, now we're doing weather, I guess. As you can see, it's rainy and it's not frozen. So when I said that lake was frozen, I was lying to you guys. If any of you don't know, 37 degrees Fahrenheit is like, what, 5 Celsius, 4 Celsius, something like that. AGM 158 JASM is the longer range 300-kilometer missile that the Ukrainians are hoping for. Thank you, guys. Sorry, my chat's delayed, so I see stuff later. But yeah, so around Avdeevka, this is actually important. I'm glad somebody brought this up. I'm glad that somebody brought this up because I've heard a lot of talk about, well, if this supply line right here gets cut, the Ukrainians can just use these dirt fields to get out of town. Obviously, with weather, oh my goodness, with weather being what it is, these dirt roads are just going to be a muddy mess, and it's going to be an absolute nightmare. On top of that, with the bad weather, expect a lot of Russian progress because Ukrainian drones won't be able to fly. So the Russians will be much, much more free to move around while the rain is coming down and make progress than they would normally if, Ukrainian drones were just slamming into them all day. Yes, it is love. Let's see. Perhaps a better question is, how long will this war continue? I've said 2026 is where I think that the Ukrainians could probably maximally extend it out to. That goes far beyond what I think the West is willing to do. I think that's far beyond what Europe is going to be able to do for Ukraine, and that's when I mean, the casualties numbers are just going to catch up with Ukraine, and they're not going to be able to hold the line against a ever-growing Russian army. People don't seem to understand this. The balance of manpower in Ukraine at the start of the war, Ukraine was up here, right? And the Russians were down here, 180,000 versus what, 300,000 active military and 700,000 reservists that got called up right away. So the Russians were here. The invasion started. Losses happened. Both sides are going down a little bit. I'm trying to get this as level for you guys as possible. And then slowly over time, Russian mobilization, the volunteer numbers started to come up, and now we're getting to a point where the Russians are now passing the Ukrainian army in Ukraine. So that means that things are going to start progressing quicker and quicker. There's, like I said, there's just more barrels being pointed at Ukraine than there are barrels pointed at Russia right now. So it's just simple math, guys. If you want to take a bet, the Russians are the heavy favorites right now. So if you want some guaranteed money, go that way. If you want to try to risk it all and make it big and get that big payout, go for Ukraine and take Ukraine getting that over too, because they're going to smash that parlay. It's the money line, boys. It's the money line. Let's see. How many tethered drones have been used in this war? Sort of like balloons, I mean? Is that what you mean? I know you're not meaning like actual balloons, but what do you mean by tethered drones exactly? I'm interested to know. If you mean like on top of vehicles, providing reconnaissance ahead of them, that is something interesting. I've seen maybe one example of that, but nothing really beyond that. Okay. I don't bet on wars. Well, you should, because why would you spend so much time watching a war and not put any skin in the game? You gotta risk it for that biscuit. I'm not a Air Force colonel. Oh man, drone attached to wires. Yeah, tethered. So that's what I thought he meant. I haven't seen that at all throughout this entire conflict, so I'm not sure. I think I just saw one Russian unit beginning to use something like that. Like an ATGM? Does the drone explode when it gets to the end of the wire? I'm very confused. Let's see. If this means Brian Berletic, I would love to have Brian on. But Brian is doing, I think he's going in a slightly different direction with his content right now. So he's not doing interviews as much, which is totally okay. Except like obviously the big ones like Duran. Like Duran is just such a good way to get your information out there, get yourself promoted. So I think that's pretty much all you're going to see him on for a while. Oh, it lets go when it gets close to the target? You mean like... Huh. I'm going to have to message me about this, and I'll see what's up. I'm genuinely curious. If you're talking about like drones that fly up and drop like large munitions, then we have started seeing that, but I don't know how that necessarily would correlate to being tethered. Yeah, fly-by-wire drones is fascinating. Oh, is that what you mean? Like it's a cord so that you don't get it interfered with? That would be cool, but I feel like that would just get stuck on shit and make everything difficult. Yeah, that would just be a fucking nightmare to fly that shit around, and it would crash. So, all right. I think I'm going to end it up there, guys. That's an hour. I appreciate y'all so much. Be sure to check in on Saturday. I think me, Clown, and Zaganel, if you guys know him from Twitter, are going to be doing a relaxed stream. We're going to be just doing a bro chat, drinking, smoking maybe. So be sure to tune in for that. And I think this week I'm going to try to do a live stream every day. So be sure to check in every day for that. even if there's not much to talk about, I'll get on here and I'll just talk with you guys and turn it into something. So I appreciate you guys, and I will see you next time. Also, if you guys have a preferred time, send me a DM that you want these live streams at. I'm pretty flexible. I don't know how much of my audience is European, how much of it is American, so on and so forth. So let me know. And also, you guys, if you just want to message me and like have questions and stuff, feel free. My DMs are always open. If you need somebody to talk to, come talk to me. Make it happen, guys. I thank you so much for watching, and take care.